Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we are looking at a knife that kind of makes me a little bit sad, a little bit nostalgic, and also a little bit excited. So I have to say a big thanks to Steve for letting me borrow this. I want to tell a short story, and I'm going to make a point as well. A number of years ago, I was fortunate to go to Blade Show. It was either 2018 or 2019. And as I'm walking through the show, I hear someone say, "Hey, Kevin Cleary, I like your videos." And I look and turn around and it's Elijah Isham. And I say, "Hey man, it's Elijah Isham. I really like your knives." And I've reviewed quite a few of them. And man, you have a really unique perspective that I really, really enjoy. And so we chatted a little bit. It was, that was the year he had brought out, that large chopper, like the horse crippler or something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to get the name right, but, we had a little bit of a discussion and, it was really great to meet him. And sadly, we all know that he has now passed away. And so I do want to say this. We need to take care of each other. Mental health is a real problem, and the systems that we have in place in our modern Western civilization are not great to deal with it. So certainly on a civilization level, we could probably do a better job. But individually, I just want to say, if you're going through something difficult, don't go through it alone. Call me, email me, but of course, I'm sure you have close friends in a community. Reach out to those people who you trust and who have got your back. And on the other hand, if maybe you're not going through anything, but I'll say this, keep an eye out, right? Pay attention to the people around you. And if you think someone might be going through something, try to reach out, go for a coffee, go for a beer, whatever the case may be. Just don't let people go through these things alone, and take the steps you need to do to get them the right kind of help. So sorry about that. I just felt like I needed to make that digression. Let's take a look at the knife in question. And I think most of you will recognize this when I get it out. This is the Kaiser Theta. And way back when this came out, I was pretty curious about it. The design is really, really cool. It's a little bit simplified for a knife from Elijah Isham, but that it's a really nice sort of melding of his unique take, but also something that's simple and clean. And in fact, this was supposed to be part of a series of sort of simplified Isham designs that Kaiser was going to do, which of course we all know didn't end up coming into fruition, sadly. So let's go ahead and take a look at this knife. We'll spend a few minutes talking about what I really like, what is fairly typical from Isham designs, features that I kind of wish were still more prevalent in the knife world today. And of course, I will say, while I'm talking about this, if you want one of these, they are still around. There's not a ton of them. A lot of stores that I looked up just said, yeah, discontinued, not available. There are some at Blade HQ. I think there are some at Blades Canada for an astronomically stupid price. So don't go there, or wait till they put them on a deep, deep discount, because that price was stupid. But you can probably find them on the secondary as well. And so we'll kind of talk about who would want this when we get to the end. It's largely, this is not something, if I owned, I would be using and carrying a whole lot, because it's kind of a special knife. So with that said, let's get into some of the size, weight, features, all that good stuff. This is not a big knife, but it's kind of a chunky knife. It's maybe a big, small knife, if that makes sense. It is only 7.5 inches long. The blade length is only 3 3/16. Now the cutting edge is a little more at 3 1/4. I mean, just a 16th of an inch more, but you can see how it kind of goes past the top of the handle there. All right. The grip area, I have to say, is a bit of a problem. It's only a 3-finger grip for me. Like, I can get my pinky resting on the knife, but it's not contributing anything meaningful. And so if Kaiser's watching this, if there's a way that you could do a larger version of this knife, push this out to a good 3 inches, and maybe even a little more, 3 1/4 inches or something. So I've got some room for my full hand, and increase the size of the knife accordingly. And I think that would be a pretty cool thing to see. I don't anticipate that happening, but a man can dream, right? So very small grip area. The weight on this is 3.9 ounces, which is a little hefty for its small size, but you've got this chunky piece of S35VN and unmilled titanium scales, so it's not unexpected. All right, moving on to that chunk of S35VN, take a look at this blade. So we've got sort of a reverse Tanto Warncliffe style blade, very high flat grind with a bit of a flat, and I kind of like the look of that better than a full flat grind, but from a design standpoint, and it flows very nicely with the knife. Large hole here for deployment, which I guess lightens it a little bit, and this is hefty blade stock, guys. This is at least 5/16, so it's a good bit over 1/8 of an inch, and I have to say I love that, and I miss that. It used to be pretty common on a lot of higher end knives to see some thick, chunky blades, and that was so good for me. First of all, I don't use my folding knife in the kitchen ever, so I don't really need a folding kitchen knife. All right. I prefer something a little more substantial because there's always the risk with my EDC knife that I'm going to be, into something that is a little more difficult, that requires a little more strength and durability. Now, that said, this is not going to be your go-to-war, tactical, outdoor survival type of folder. Okay, I get that. And in its role, a thinner blade would be fine, but it would definitely detract. Like, it's just nice to see this big, thick blade, this dramatic blade in this very dramatic design. It just fits better as far as I'm concerned. And I wish we saw a lot more of it in the industry. It's kind of a trend that has sadly died. All right. So S35VN stonewash finish. The performance on this blade is actually very, very good. It's thin behind the edge-ish, carries a lot of strength out to that tip. So it's a blade that inspires a lot of confidence. And it's really, in fact, for the fact, even though it's kind of thick and chunky, it is very well balanced. This will cut just fine. It doesn't need to be paper thin in order to work well in EDC style cutting tasks. All right. So big fan of this blade. I like the material. I know there are better steels out there for sure. But back in the day that this was going on, S35VN was right up there, man. It was very, very hot steel, and it's still a great steel that we cannot complain about. Right? I mean, if you are complaining about it, your complaints are a little bit misguided. All right. Blade, I think, is a win. I love the design of it. I love the look of it. I love the extended. So there is a little flat spot here. You got to be really careful if you're going to be putting your fingers here, but you can kind of choke up and get your finger way out here, and you've got tons of real estate for your thumb as well. So from an ergonomic standpoint, I find the blade contributes as well, and that's kind of needed given how short the knife is. What about the action? So the action has a bit of a learning curve. First of all, the flipper tab is up here, which was a pretty common Elijah Isham tactic. He liked to tuck it way up there and kind of have an upward facing design. The detent is not super stiff. It's not a really hard detent. The knife deploys well, but it definitely takes a little bit of time to kind of figure it out. The other thing that you have to kind of figure out on this knife is the thumb flick. I mean, the Spidey flick is great, but when you're opening the knife, you see how there's a cutout here for your thumb to get on the lock bar. If you use it, it works great. If you don't use it, I have a habit of getting way up here and then trying to open the knife, and you can see the blade immediately hits my thumb, and I've got to move my thumb and then push this past the detent ball, and then I can close the knife. All right. Again, if you had this knife for a couple days or a couple weeks like I have, again, thanks, Steve. Sorry about the delay on this. But if you've had it for a little bit of time, you pretty quickly learn to just modify how you open the knife, and then it works really, really well. Okay, so that's the action. Finally, let's talk about this handle. Clean handle with a nice bead blasted finish there, milled titanium clip that you don't really notice. Now, I will say, because of the small size, I don't know what would happen if you had smaller hands and could hold the knife with a fuller grip, if that handle would be an issue. But because I can't get a full grip on this anyway, it's not what I would consider a super confidence inspiring grip. So I will say that's a bit of a complaint. I find this is just really difficult for me and my hand to comfortably deal with. And again, I wish it were bigger. For a 3-finger knife, it's not bad, but the problem is it's kind of too big to be a 3-finger knife, and it's too small to have, anyway, it kind of lands in a weird spot that makes it hard to get a good comfortable grip, at least for me and my hand size. All right. Now, well, I should qualify that again by saying, again, this is not your go-to-war survival type knife. And so because of that, do you need that type of ergonomics? No, I wish it had it, but that's okay. All right. In terms of comparisons, there's not, I will throw in a couple of things. So what have we got from, I guess, here's a knife that is sort of similar in size. And of course is certainly a beautifully designed knife. Here is another, this knife also came from Steve. Thanks a lot. This is the CJRB Echo. These are, oldest. This is a couple years old. This is like brand new or new-ish. So those are some comparisons for you. All of these are in that smaller size category. I find these two do a little bit better job giving me, performance ergonomics in terms of the ergonomics. But nonetheless, it's hard to find good comparisons to many Isham designs. But I think those two kind of fit in that they're different, they're interesting, and they're knives you might buy not just because you want a practical cutting tool. If all you want to do is cut stuff, you can probably buy a cold steel and it'll do the job for you. All right. So what do I have to say about this knife as sort of a conclusion? Look, this is not going to be the knife for everyone. It's a knife that I think if you're a fan of Elijah Isham, this is a great option to have. If you want, sort of a classy office carry that has a little bit of flair, I think this is a great knife for that role. If you want just a practical cutting tool, there are probably knives that are easier to get and which are a little more affordable, although the price is reasonable-ish on Blade HQ. But, if you're a fan of Elijah Isham, if you want something that sort of, acknowledges his influence in the world and you want it to be a little nicer, there are a bunch of Civivis out there, but that's not quite as special as I think this would be. So, very cool knife from the standpoint of who designed it, for the nostalgia points that it gets. And I have to say, making this video and thinking through what I was going to talk about in this review was so enjoyable. It just brought back a lot of memories and a lot of thoughts to years gone by in the industry when Kaiser was doing some different things and when styles and trends were a little bit different. And so again, Steve, thank you for letting me borrow this knife. I'll have it back to you as soon as I can. Thank you guys for watching. Wish you all the best. We'll talk to you soon.